What's going on, YouTube? I'm Ranger Not Available, but you can call me Aiden. Today, I'm going to do something a little weird, at least for this kind of part of my channel, or like set of channels. Rather than tell you a story necessarily, I'm going to set up a few characters. Specifically, I'm going to tell you about my classmates, or technically my former classmates, considering I graduated just this year. So where do I even begin? I guess with what I would call the core four. In the very end of senior year, by the end of senior year, there were exactly 12 of us. But we didn't really start out that way, especially since kindergarten. The reason I call them the core four is because there have been 4 people living and that didn't drop out who have stayed throughout kindergarten all the way through senior year of high school. There have only been 4 of us. That is myself and 3 of my friends. So there were the 2 girls, Maddie and Caitlin, Madison and Caitlin. I'll often refer to them as Maddie and Kate, or some other pretty close version of that. And one of my best friends, Oscar. The reason I had to specify there is because there were also 2 others. One of them was basically everybody's best friend. He was a really good man. His name was Briar. He's the one I lost in a car accident. It was the summer of my sophomore year. And then the other of the ones who stayed basically all throughout high school without transferring or doing any of that is Michael. Michael dropped out after sophomore year, I think unrelated to Briar's death. No idea what that is, but I see weird light over in the horizon. It's fine, probably. Anyway, yeah, so Michael dropped out, sophomore year, end of sophomore year, after it had really gone. And those are the core people who were there all throughout high school until, of course, they left, or in the case of Briar, passed away. But there were others that I started out with. I don't really have a lot. Ooh, it's a little windy out. Hopefully I can get this video done. Anyway, aside from those 6, there were a few that I didn't really know super well, aside from one who is in the first 3 grades. Well, I guess there's another one. I'll get to those. So there were a few people who I never really, I don't want to say I didn't talk to. It's not like I actively avoided them. It's more like, unlike the rest of them, I didn't really interact with them as much, even though we were a small class. So out of our kindergarten class, aside from us, 6, there was Wyatt, who I do have one story about later in, I don't want to say later in life, but later on after he left our school. I think he was homeschooled after that for a while, because Michael was a bit of a bully, especially during his younger years. When he got older, he was worse in different ways, but he wasn't as much of a bully. Then, aside from Wyatt, there were also 2 others who ended up leaving or transferring after kindergarten. Well, sort of, I guess. So there was Hayden, who's actually in my graduating class, but he moved to Alaska for most of his schooling. And he's pretty hard to understand, but he's a good guy. He wants to be I can't even talk. He wants to be a professional boxer, which I don't know if that's a good career choice, but he would definitely fit the part, that's for sure. But he's a good guy. And then the other, who was part of our kindergarten class, was a guy named Chance. And I think he was held back by his parents and then ended up transferring to a rival school in our conference. Then came first grade, where there was this one kid. I think his name was James. He wasn't weird or anything, but he was there for, I think, a month maybe in first grade and then left. Never heard from him again. No clue who he is or anything like that. He's just in one of my school photos, of our class. The other person who transferred in during first grade was Emma. And this is probably going to get confusing later on, but Emma is not the same person as someone else who we're going to talk about, who I don't really care for, but yeah, I hope that was a car and not thunder, because I don't see any clouds, but, well, I guess there's some, Cirrus kind of clouds up there. It's probably fine. So, after Emma was first grade, so second grade, I don't think anybody came in. I think Emma left after the first semester of second grade, but she ended up coming back in, I think, 5th grade or 6th grade. No, it might have been late 4th grade, because she had transferred to another school in a neighboring town, but not in our conference. They were a division above us, I believe. But the next person who I believe transferred in was a guy named Keel. He is one of the three amigos, which I'll get to that group in a minute. But it contains Oscar, Keel, and another guy who I'll talk about in just a minute. He's one of my best friends too. I'm not personally part of the Three Amigos. We've called them that. The teachers have called them that too, because if someone was going somewhere, all three of them were going in that same direction at the same time from the same class. They were always together, and it would have been the four had Briar not passed away. After third grade, two others ended up joining. An annoying person named Rachel, that surprises no one, and a very kind woman named Frankie. Frankie's history is a lot more tragic than pretty much anybody else's, but our entire class has been a mess, so it depends on who you ask. But I'd say Frankie probably had it the hardest. Let's see. 5th grade had 3 join. One at the start of the year named Dustine. So to paint a picture, during the kind of early times, she is from a neighboring state that is more friendly towards some drugs. So that's kind of her vibe she gives off, but I don't think she was a drug addict. Never saw her smoking or vaping or anything like that. But she seems pretty normal, at least on the surface. Especially once you get to know her, she's pretty darn normal, at least in my opinion. But if you want some visual, think kind of typical emo, but not overwhelmingly so. Just a little bit in there. But also a lot of, punk vibes. Somewhere in between those is where Dustine lies. The other two that joined fifth grade year are Jillian, who, let's just say, didn't pass a citizenship test because of things she should have known because she just wasn't paying attention in like fourth grade. Very much typical, like, I don't want to say she's like dumb blonde, but she gives off kind of that vibe sometimes. Not super like that vibe. She was brunette, not blonde, and that's besides the point, but like, she was never the most intelligent. She's said a lot of funny things that especially me and my history teacher would kind of quote because it's funny. There was something, I think we were talking about the Civil War, and she listed the Terracotta Army from ancient China, I believe, and the Soviet Union, as in the Cold War, which are wrong in both directions, which we just thought was funny. And she was known for doing that kind of stuff, but she wasn't necessarily dumb by any means. Just not the most intelligent at times. Then the other person who joined, which made Jillian a pain in the butt for several years, was Emmeline, the person who I'm not super fond of. She was really quiet around other people, but I think as far as Jillian went, she kind of led her astray, kind of made her an annoyance to literally everybody. And kind of used her, I want to say, as a scapegoat. But I think that even to this day, they're still kind of friends. I think they've both grown up from that. Again, this was in fifth grade, so cut them some slack, you know? Sixth grade is when things got interesting, we'll say. Two people joined. One is someone I'm telling on myself here. I used to have a crush on when I was in like 7th and 8th grade. But looking at her now, there are words I don't want to say. We'll say that, all right? That would describe her very well. And her name was Addie. So nowadays, she ticks me off. So thankfully, she wasn't in my graduating class. But the other person is probably the nicest guy you could ever meet. I mean, I'm not saying the other guys, especially in the Three Amigos, were like bad guys by any means. They're all very, very nice people. But Gabe is on a whole nother level. Think like if you go to a Cracker Barrel and you see an old man there and he's next to someone who you'd think is maybe his grandson. Gabe's that grandson. Like, stereotypical person to, like, eat at a Cracker Barrel every single day. Like, or, like, just to find in a diner. He's that guy. He's got buck teeth. He's such a funny guy. He was raised by, like, not by the Amish, but, like, in an Amish community, basically. And he lived out in the middle, like, literally. I live in the middle of nowhere. He was truly in the middle of nowhere. Like, nobody, even now, he lives down a road, like, by a cornfield. He's like, if you think of a redneck, he is a redneck. He just looks like a redneck, talks about guns all the time, didn't really care. Brought knives to school on several occasions, but all three of the Three Amigos did that. But that's because they were all farm guys. They all worked on farms or ranches in the case of Keel. But they were all using it to, like, cut hay or straw or whatever, like, bales open. So they're used to carrying knives on them. But, you know, it's... Those three really got along. The reason I talk about Gabe so much is because, A, he's super funny and he's like Johnny Cash levels of old school when it comes to music. Like, anything past Johnny Cash, nothing. So, like, he watches black and white westerns on Like, that's what he watches. Like, his parents don't want him watching PG-13 rated R movies, those kind of things. Like, most parents would at that age especially. But, like, he doesn't really care either. So he's watched, like... He watches, like, old Clint Eastwood or, like, just old cowboy movies. And it's just hilarious. But yeah, he's such a nice guy. But we, like, really got along because we both liked playing checkers. And we'd play quite a bit just when we got bored or, like, when we had free time. So 6th grade, by the way, was 2020. So end of 6th grade didn't exist for me. I went from 5th grade, start of 6th grade, couple months. I went on vacation to Arizona, and I think Wyatt Hickson is his name, but he left after, I think, like 3rd grade. And I saw him in freaking Arizona it was a Medieval Times in Arizona. It might have been, no, was it? Yes, it was Arizona, I think. Or was it Vegas? No, it would have been Arizona, because Vegas was more recent. I've traveled a lot. But we saw him in Arizona, like, literally right before the pandemic hit our little town. And it was hilarious, because, like, what are the odds? We could have been on the same flight and not even noticed. But they were also in Arizona. And his mother was the math teacher for the longest time. So that's when I learned algebra. I suck at algebra, by the way. But yeah, it was just a funny occurrence. That's my one very funny Wyatt story. But yeah, 7th grade, I think we got 2 new kids. I say kids, like, they were kids at the time. That being Jaden and Jordan. But I feel like I'm missing some. I'd have to think about it, though. Anyway, Jaden and Jordan are twins. And the only reason I can tell them apart to this day is because Jordan is, like, standard height. I say standard, but, like, normal height for a woman at, like, whatever it is, like 5'8", 5'9", whatever it is. And yeah, so Jordan's taller, and Jaden is, I want to say, like a foot shorter. So next to her, I look like a giant, like an actual giant. But yeah, I don't really have a ton of the stories about them. I mostly stay to myself. At least when it comes to, like, them, I didn't really interact with them a whole lot. They weren't in a ton of my classes. Now, past that, we have where were we? Eighth grade? So I think about halfway through 7th grade, Addie and Dustine both left. And then throughout 8th grade, neither of them came back. Addie and Dustine had both transferred temporarily, I think to the same school, but maybe to different schools. But both, I know, definitely stayed within our conference. Then Dustine ended up coming back, I think, at the start of freshman year. But in between there was someone I forgot. I think it was end of 8th grade year when she ended up coming in. Her name was Ella. And holy cow. So if you remember, Dustine was kind of in between that punk and emo. I'd say it leans more towards that punk vibe. Holy crap. Ella leaned way toward that emo. She showed up. Like, I don't want to misstereotype the stereotype, you know, but like she's from California first off. None of us live near California or have lived near California. So she came all the way from Cali. But she looked not bad, but like for our area very different, we'll say. Cuz out here you get a lot of rednecks, a lot of cowboys. You do not see a lot of people from Cali, you know? Um I don't even know how to describe her, but that if you want to picture in your mind, picture someone very emo, except ignore the hair. The hair is completely different. She had longer hair, but not like in front of her face, really. But yeah, that was freaking Ella. And I'm surprised she didn't flunk out of school. She ended up moving back to California after about 2 years, but her sister did not, due to family troubles. That's not my business. I was just in an extra hour of school during the time which her sister was also during an extra hour of school, specifically to get work done, so that she could graduate and then emancipate herself so she could stay, like, in our area, because she liked it here more than in California, which I'm not saying anything about California except, you know, people would rather be in the middle of nowhere with nothing to do than be in California. At least some people. Which makes sense to me, at least. Now that we're about this far, I think after freshman year, we haven't really added anybody except for one exception. But I'll get to that. During my freshman year, I think, or I guess it'd be after, obviously Dustine came back, like I said before, and Rachel ended up leaving. And then I don't think anybody else came back during that time, did they? Oh, I forgot. Crap. Okay, so Emmeline ended up leaving, I think, 7th or 8th grade. But I want to say it was 8th grade. Maybe it was 7th grade. Frankie ended up having to leave for a reason that I shouldn't have forgotten, but because I was in the middle of another story I didn't think about. Frankie's mother had cancer, and by 7th grade her condition had deteriorated a lot, like a lot. And her parents were split up at that point. So once her mother passed away, Frankie had to move down to Georgia with her father. Not saying he was a bad guy. She visited him on a pretty regular basis, especially over the summer. But yeah, it's a very, very sad story. And I don't think anybody had probably a rougher life, especially up till that point, than Frankie ended up having. And then after freshman year, I don't think anybody came or left aside from Ella, which I think she left basically midway through sophomore year, although I'm not super familiar on the details, because she kind of disappeared, but also kind of didn't. It was really weird. I'm hoping she's doing okay, but I'm just saying I'm kind of glad she wasn't in my graduating class, because we probably would have butted heads. And then, like I think I told in the one video with a train in the middle, after my sophomore year, one of my best friends ended up dying in a car accident, and that was Briar. He was a very good man, and yeah, I don't really have a whole lot more to say about that in this video. If you really, really want to know, you can go check out the other one, but it is what it is. I've basically made peace with it by now, but it still hurts, you know? Anyway, back to the rest of my classmates. I know I seem like I'm brushing this like over. A, I don't want to talk about it, but B, I've already talked about it, so I know I'm brushing this over like it was no big deal, but this is actually a very big deal to me. I want to make that super clear. But the point is, I have to move on with this video because it's already getting long enough. And if you really want to know, again, I've already posted that video. Or maybe I haven't posted it, but it's uploaded already. So, please be patient. Now, starting junior year, this is when I kind of started intermixing with the senior class as a junior. But a lot of them I had known for a long time through like church events. I had known Quentin. We were pretty good friends with the Estradas, and I took classes with Josh, who's one of the Estradas, and they were both very funny, very good guys. Both played basketball real good. But that's kind of still besides the point. Junior year, the one exception of someone who actually did show up. Well, two exceptions, kind of. Hayden actually ended up showing back up about halfway through my junior year from Alaska. I'd seen him like once during the summertime when we were probably, I don't know, 8th grade. I saw him one time rushing by like at a park in the middle of summertime, just in the most random time. But that was the only time I had seen him in literal years. So aside from that, it was basically the first time seeing them since then. Since whatever it was, like 3rd grade when he left. So our one exception is a foreign exchange student, actually. Her name is Carla Gomez. Can't say that name to this day. And I definitely can't say it like she could. But she stayed with my music teacher and her family. Super nice family, by the way. And I hope you guys can hear me over the wind. I don't really have wind protection for my iPhone's microphone, but that's just what I'm using. But she was such a nice person, and like, it was kind of surprising to me, not necessarily culture shock, like me towards their culture, but her toward ours was kind of wild, you know? Like, if you've seen culture shock videos, especially around the World Cup event that happened, it's really, really impressive and really, really cool. But when it comes to the like her coming over here, she was expecting, I think, literally living in the middle of nowhere. And like, sure, we don't have anything bigger than like a Walmart out here, but like, we're not like a barren wasteland where there's like a town with no electricity. Like, come on, cut us a little slack, Carla. But no, she is such a nice lady, and I wish her the best. And she, again, was an exchange student, so she was only over here for a year, which is a lot more than I could probably do with seeing my family. Like, sure, in the modern era, you have, like, FaceTime and stuff, but, man, that'd be so tough. I definitely couldn't do it. And then, of course, she left after junior year, which leads us to senior year, which nobody joined, nobody left. But our final roster was, I think, 12 of us, 11 not counting Hayden, because Hayden was kind of an edge case, and we were all kind of surprised that they let him graduate because he didn't fulfill most of the requirements, but he kind of did. It was complicated. But yeah, that's way too long of an explanation for this video, but those characters are real people, so if you end up tracking them down, which please don't try, be nice to them. You know, they're still good people. I believe most people are good people. But yeah, that's really it. At least now you know kind of who all of these people are, and I don't have to refer to people as, oh, my former classmate, and just not give a name. So I've named them all, and yeah, that's really it for me for this one at least. So until next time, I'm Ranger Not Available, but you can call me Aiden, and I will see you all in the next one. Peace and love, and goodbye.